All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. I am Jeremy Lewinowitz. I will be leading our call today. Um, and we'll get started in just a little bit. Just general reminders. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat and the Q&A. We do have one pre-submitted question from Vlastislav, who I do see is in the call right now. So we will get to your question first. But I'll give it a minute for anyone else to join, and if anyone else has additional questions to post in the chat, and then we'll get started in just a minute. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. As I said, we already have a pre-submitted question, so we'll get to that in a second. I'm just going to highlight a couple important things that we like to point out in the beginning of these pretty often. So we do have a couple QR codes here on my slide, so if you want to check those out, please feel free to do so. We have our decision support YouTube channel in the top right. This is our YouTube channel where we post all of the Lunch and Learns, so a recording of every Lunch and Learn will go up on that YouTube channel. So if you missed a day, or if you want to refer back to a day that you had questions about or that you attended and you want to remind yourself of what was discussed or whatever, you can go to that channel. It's just decisions-support is the YouTube channel name, and we'll put all of our Lunch and Learns up there. But we also do put other videos up as well. So the training team does create content like a step-by-step series where we'll take a deeper dive into specific steps. We also talk about occasional other important content of just useful information and things that are good to know in decisions. So you can always check that out and see if anything there is interesting to you. And if you don't have anything there that is what you're looking for, you can always reach out to the training team and leave a suggestion, and we can, try to make videos for some kind of content if there's something that you're looking for that you just haven't quite found. And we're always happy to add more stuff to that. So that's on our YouTube channel. You can also check out the Solutions Marketplace, which just has a great way to look at a number of different applications and some really neat things. If you want to ever take a look at some of the things that we have available. So if you go to marketplace.decisions.com as well, if you didn't use the QR code, you can kind of see a number of really neat applications that are already pre-built for you. And you can simply just export those and then import them into your decisions software and, just try it out. Uh, Playbook Activity Manager is a popular new one. We actually recently put up a video on our YouTube channel discussing this and how it works. So there's some pretty cool stuff in there if you're curious about that, as well as a number of other things. So if you're ever curious or interested, you can always go and check them out and see if it has uh, anything interesting to you or you think is usable to you. And you can kind of, get an idea, some screenshots of what it looks like. Obviously, we have a video on the Playbook Manager, so you can check that out on YouTube. But any of these, if you have interest, you can just simply download them and import them into Decisions. So with that out of the way, we will move on to some questions and start talking about anything we have. So if you have any additional questions, we just have the one that we'll go over. Please feel free to type them in the chat or in the Q&A, and we can go over them. But for now, I do have a question that Vlastislav has pre-submitted. I will give you the ability to talk so you can add more if you have any additional information. But let me read the question out loud for the video so everyone can hear it and know what we're going to do. So the question here is regarding data sharing between active form flows, is there a way to have some common variables accessible or writable from within multiple active form flows? The idea is to share and modify non-form related data within the active form flows. Let me just go ahead and just build a couple quick things just to get this started so we can start to demo this. If you have any additional information, feel free to speak up while I'm just building some basic stuff. All right, I'm just going to create a quick flow. We're going to put our form into this. And I'm just going to make a basic. Throw some things in here so we have some stuff to manipulate. Submit button here.
Hey, good morning. This is Lars speaking. Just to clarify, since the question field on the form is quite short, so the idea is actually not to manipulate the data within the form components. I mean, that's one of the options we have, but the idea was to basically have some normal variable which we can potentially change in the active form flow, not having to actually store the data, let's say, within the web component. I mean, that's what I'm using currently as a workaround to just have some text box, for instance, which is hidden or visible for the end user, and store the value into that component or different type of component. But that's a sort of workaround which we are using. But I was wondering if there is a way we can do it directly with some variable, basically.
Okay, yeah. So basically, anytime you're utilizing an active form flow with anything, I'm just going to use this just to demonstrate what we can pull from. We have a couple of things. So the key of where you can get data from, at least into an active form flow, you got your form data. This is just anything that's coming from data within your form, right? Like I put a text box and a number box so I can get the data from those things here. But we also have form input data, and this is if you have any items set as an input on the form. So I set up two pieces of input data that the form could take in if I wanted to pass data into the form. And so if I go to form input data from my active form flow, I have access to these things. So for example, if you're looking for, data that you want to be able to use on any of these active form flows, whether you create one or a bunch of them, as long as you have inputs going into your form, you do have the ability to take those data items into any active form flow if you're trying to build and build data from it or create any information from it.
But I mean, disadvantage of it is you cannot modify those. At least that doesn't work for me. So if you try to, let's say, override the form into data, it doesn't fly in the next active flow.
Have
So basically, if you want to store the data, basically, and then
right?
use it, then this method, at least for me, doesn't really work.
Even if have you used a lot the change value concept on the end or on any like step in here? Because that's typically where you would make a change um, with these things, right? So like if I have that data coming in and I use change value, it should change the value of whatever that input data is to display the proper item. Let me just try to test this out and see what I can do here. Okay. So what I'm going to try is I'm going to input I'll input like a number with some value with text, and then we'll get this active form flow to run, and we'll see if it can change the value of the input to display with these two things. So that'll be different. And then we'll get a pop-up that should display that afterwards. So then let me just do it like I change the value here, it'll trigger. And we'll just do a quick test here and see if this works. And then if it doesn't, we'll go from there. So then let's see here, number input, string input. I have this be 1 and this be bold text. And let's just test it out. It doesn't matter. Okay. So here you can see the pop-up, at least while the flow is running, it does update that value, right? So my original input values were um, 1 and old text. But if in my rule flow, right, I use change value on the output of some step, right, that's gathering that data or taking that data or changing it, it if it does change value, it will change value to the input. So it does change something based on what the information that I put in or based on what I wanted it to change. So then the question is just like what you want to actually do with it. Um, it does have the ability to save so that in that moment that input data does get changed to whatever I had it changed to with my change
What,
value option. So then the
so
question is if you're trying to save it, right? If I want to take this data now and actually like save it or incorporate it somewhere else, then you would just need other steps based on that kind of like saving concept. If it's, like a save entities step or something, so we can actually save that data.
okay, now, for instance, in this scenario, if you create another active form flow for the next component, let's say for the text one, and create another flow which would utilize the same input data, which you would override within this active flow. Can you try that? Because that's what doesn't work for me. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
I see. I
this
see what
works
you mean.
in this specific active flow. So you override the data there, but it's not, let's say, global change. I believe. I mean, at least for me, yeah, not that way. You're on version 8 still, so maybe that it was a little bit. Let's see.
I see. So if I take this from my form input data,
Um,
then I take this from the other one. You're saying if this gets run afterwards or whatever, then it might not actually keep what I had saved from the original one.
yes, yeah.
Okay, so we get that. Oh, I didn't. I should have made a pop up. Or I can just type it. I go to this rule flow. It looks to me like it kept the change. Maybe the order might be important. If
Mhm,
there's like a
mhm.
certain order, obviously you'd have to account for that. Because if this ran first, right? If this rule flow had run first, then yeah, it would not have kept the data from the first one. Um, so I guess at least at the way that I started building this out, it would be very finicky. You'd have to be very careful. Um,
Mhm.
but at least from my testing, unless someone else observing has something else to point out. It looks to me like as long as this whole main flow is running, it this variable will hold whatever the most recent updated data is. And so in this moment, the most
Mhm.
recent updated data is what my first rule flow changed the value to. So then anything afterwards that's calling that input data, since I did change value on the input data, anything else that's calling it should be referring to that new updated piece of information.
Okay, thanks. And I'll try because that's exactly what I was trying to do, and yeah, it didn't work for me. Uh, but yeah, thank you. And just
Okay.
out of curiosity, so the form input data is the key here, let's say. So there is no like another, I don't know, type of variable which would serve the same purpose.
Yeah, I mean the form input data is easy because it's based on something that goes into the form, and all active form flows will have access to that exact same data. Um,
Mhm.
I guess the other thing that you could consider using, and this I'm not sure how it would, um, how exactly it would interact with the, I always forget what this is. Variables constants. You can set up system constants. So then these would be like constant data pieces that are available across anything. So similar to how anytime I open up a flow, I always have access to the flow data of like the initiating user and stuff like that. I can do the same thing here. If I set up a system constant, I would have that information available throughout all of my flows and things. I just don't know about updating that constant if it would work in the same way like you're asking for. If I wanted to change the data of
Mhm.
that, that would have to change across the whole system. And I think that could potentially, depending on the use case, I guess. So I'm not sure if it would be difficult to do or if it would be more, I guess, risky to do because this is
Mhm.
across, the whole entire project utilizing it. And so um, that may be
Yeah,
another
yeah.
option to play with.
Right, yeah, but yeah, if the from data works, then that's perfectly fine for me.
Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah, of course. Happy to help. All right. We have another question in the Q&A at the moment from Alexander. It says, how would you go about having a workflow run at a certain time and send emails out based on the data pool? Um, Alexander, do you have anything to uh, add or you want to expand on that? My immediate thought is just to set up a scheduled job if you're talking about having something run at specific times.
Yeah, so I have a report that goes to a couple of people. And during the report process, it has to be approved by around three different teams. And so sometimes a job gets stuck at a team, and we want a way to alert the person who's, doing that job and say, hey, it's been 24 hours. Can you, can you take a look at this?
Okay. And this is you're doing this directly through assignments.
I'm
Like,
sorry, assignments?
is this related to like assignments within decisions or just something separate?
No, it's all built on decisions.
Okay. So, because there's a couple ways. So obviously you can have it a scheduled job. A scheduled job allows you to, pick up, you can create your flow and then you can set how often this runs. This is less, I guess, less dependent on, who, if it's like 24 hours after something and it would be more like, you could set this to be daily and it would maybe within this flow, you could have a rule to check how long the assignment has been in process or something, or at a certain time. It would be a little bit more complex, I think, with the way you started to describe this, to do it with a scheduled job. But you can have it set to send something out every like weekly, first day of the month, whatever, daily, um, to then like check something and then send an email based on whatever information. But you can set when it starts and how often it starts and that kind of thing. So you can have that like running in your system if you have anything like certain days of the week, exactly when it gets sent. So scheduled jobs do allow you to kind of set that kind of thing. Um, that's like one place that you can set it. However, if you're talking about assignments specifically, if this is utilizing the actual decisions assignment, like sending a task to someone in decisions through a form, just use the one that we created earlier as an example here. Assignments actually have states attached to them. So you can find them under assignment setup. There are specific dates and states that you can set for certain items. So then you can say when this assignment gets set, I want to actually send a warning for a certain time or for like a certain event. So maybe if it is set out for like a certain number of days, you can compute, X amount of days into the future or whatever you want. So if you want it to be 24 hours for a warning, then you can set that to be, exactly one day. Why didn't I type there? Say like, hey, one day in the future from when this assignment was set this to a warning. And then you can give that person a warning to say, hey, please complete this assignment. There's further states that you can kind of set to, so you can decide how exactly you want to use these. But you can set exactly at what points it reaches those states. So then you can say, okay, well, at this point, this is officially going to be marked as late, and I need this to get completed. Or you can even set it to expire, and then you can say, well, what do I want to do if it expires? And then, set that to, so if it expires after a certain amount of time, then what do I want to actually do with that information? So you can actually set that. And then on the assignment, there's like assignment start, warn, late, escalate flows. So then you can actually build these and set like a flow to create it. So if it hits that late state, what do I want it to do? And I can actually build a flow so that when it creates that, I want to this is where you can craft your specific email to say, hey, you need to get this assignment completed, and different things like that, so that you can actually notify a user. So if that's what you're looking for, to me at least, your description sounded more like this. As long as you're utilizing the decisions assignments to do that, and you want a user to complete it, then you can actually send flow, or like build these flows to send warnings and to change the state of the flow itself. So it's both useful to track the data. So then you can say, like, actually track how often someone's getting their assignments into a warn or a late state and stuff like that, if that's something you care about. But at the very least, you can then set up the flows to then actually send the messages to a user to say, hey, when I hit that late state, send that user an email to say, hey, do this, make a change for me, or you need to actually complete this assignment. I can even if I just set this up to be in like seconds, I can demonstrate this real quick. So you can kind of see how it would work. So on like the warning, I want to create a warning. It's called the form assignment handler flow, for when those assignments are reached. I'm just going to use a pop-up because it's easy to just quickly demonstrate. But obviously, pop-ups only show up in decisions in the moment, so it's likely not something you want to do to actually tell someone to complete an assignment. Whoops, I don't know what I just clicked. Did I just delete? I just closed my tab. Assignment. Yeah, that's going to delete everything to you. Oh, whoops, I didn't make it a task. This is why you save often, and be careful if you fat finger something on your keyboard. Okay, let's try this again. We're going to compute this. And just give it 5 seconds in the future. We're gonna set the late one as well and compute this to be 10 seconds in the future. And then on this, we're gonna make just a quick flow. So we'll pick it. And so we'll make a pop-up happen when it's a warning. Make a pop-up happen when it hits late. Right? And let's just assign it to myself. Okay. So then if I run this flow, it'll send an assignment. But let's say I don't complete it and we just wait, then it should reach these other states. And as long as I didn't mess this up, then it should send me some messages or some pop-ups, which it already doesn't look good because I'm not seeing them. Someone, I know Jared, I see you in here. Am I missing something that I should have seen in my pop-ups? Did I misconfigure something? I don't want to
You,
spend too long looking for it.
you might have to make sure that you change the show pop-up context to current user instead of the system context. Because by default, when that runs, it runs on a system context level.
You mean like that? Oh, there we go. Okay. Thank you, Jared. Yep, so there you go. 5 seconds later, I get that pop-up, right? That marks it as late. I get another pop-up that marks it at, or it marks it as warning, get another pop-up that marked it as late. So I can see that those flows did run. That was just a pop-up specific reason why that wasn't working because I had to change the context there. But right, so then you can have that work with emails and other, other forms of notification as well. So then you can also track the state of what's happening with these assignments, but then also send users an email or a notification to say, hey, you got to make sure that this gets completed. And when you're building these, obviously you can have them go from, come from the person that got assigned to, and whatever that is as you're building out your flows. So this, at least your initial description made it sound like it's more like this is what you're looking for to make sure you set that up. And you can set up, exactly how long it takes until that notification happens, um, and that kind of thing. So you should at least be able to get that information as needed.
No, that looks good.
All right. Perfect. All right. At the moment, I don't see any other questions. Anyone else have anything they'd like to ask? Double check about. I do have documentation on that assignment process as well. I'll just post that in the chat in case anyone's curious. All right. Oh, perfect. We have another question. Hi, I'm new on this. I would like to know how you can move a change in dev to move to another environment. Yeah, I can kind of showcase a little bit of this. So whenever you're in you're talking about like making a change in your development server, and if you want to adjust, you should have your designer repository and everything set up. If you want to just simply um, take something and send it to the repository, that's what the check-in process is going to do. So under your designer repository actions, if you go under designer repository check-in, it'll take that project and it'll check that project into the repository. So if you not want to send whatever data you've recently made, I don't have a repository server connected at the moment. It'd take me a little bit of time to make sure that's connected properly. But that's simply all you do, right? You have your designer repository as long as you have it connected, which let me just show just in case you don't know. It should already be connected. An admin would have to do this because it's from the settings, but you go to your designer repository settings, and then from there you can make sure that you connect to the proper URL to allow those repository settings to be connected. So once an admin has that connected, then you'll have this action to go to designer repository and complete these actions. So let's say this is my dev server. I built my project. I'm ready to check it into the repository. I hit check in and it'll send my project to the repository. It'll give me like a couple menus that I can click through to make sure that I select everything. Maybe there's like certain elements of this. I've got 3 flows here. Maybe I want to exclude one of these flows from my check-in. I can do that as well. So I do have the ability to, choose exactly what I want to check in. If there's certain things I don't want to check in, that kind of thing. So I can do that just from right clicking and checking it in, and that'll send my item to the repository. Once I have something in the repository, if I go to another server, or maybe I just want to, I know that this project has been updated since, on a different server or something and sent to the repository. If I want to grab something, whether it's from it, on a different server, or I want to make sure that I get the most update version on this server, that's what checkout is going to do. Checkout is going to let me choose something that's in the repository, most likely the most recent version that's been uploaded to the repository. Checkout is how I can pull from that. So typically, right, if you're on one dev server, you build all your stuff, you check it in, send it to the repository. And then if you have, another environment that's maybe going to be meant for your QA to do some testing, they're going to go and they're going to check out a project and they're going to check out and grab your project from the repository, and it'll import everything directly into the system so that they can start working on and testing it and everything like that. And then similarly, when you're ready to send it to production, then typically you'll make a branch from that, and then you will also check that out, check out that branch, check it out, and place it into your production server so that it's ready to go. But it's all pretty much it's all about the check-in and check-out process. Sending it check-in to send it to the repository, check out to pull it from the repository. Anything else kind of like separate or outside of repository, you also just have your basic import and export. If you're just kind of working on your own or whatever, and you want to export a project, you can export whatever that current project is and then directly download it. And then now you'll have a zip file with that project in it. And everything in it and everything that's attached to it. And then you can send that file somewhere and then import project if you have a zip file that you want to place into another server or another location or whatever, import project, and then you can choose that file and import the project into decisions. So really kind of like two ways depending on what you're looking for, with the repository checking in and checking out, or just your basic import export if you're just passing a file along. Hopefully that answers your question, gives you at least a general idea there on what you're looking for. Right. Any other questions today? All right, yeah. Perfect. Okay. Let's see. Many thanks. I didn't see any branch on prod. That means I have to create a new one and connect with the other environments, right? Yes. So as long as each environment has, again, an admin will have to set it up, but each environment would need those settings to be connected with the designer repository settings with the correct URL and show repository actions showing. And then all of those environments should have the ability then to have your check-in and check-out options. And so then from there, as long as those settings are enabled, then any environment that has those settings and is connected to that same URL for your repo server, then you should be able to, check out a project to grab from the repository and place it there. All right. Last chance. Any additional questions for today? All right. Then I think we will be ending it a little bit early. Still got a couple more lunch and learns this week. Robert will be on tomorrow, and then I will be back on Thursday. So stay tuned. If you have any other questions, please feel free to either submit them ahead of time or join lunch and learn again this week, and you can ask in the chat for Q&A like we did today with some questions. So thank you all for joining. For those that asked questions, thank you for those that helped me sending me the links and piping in while we were working. And with that in mind, we will see all of you next time. Thank you for joining.